Hey Matthias, conveyor belts are so old school.
Might feel like that, but they still make a lot of sense in many use cases. And that's why we dedicate episode 17 to the question when to use a AGV and when to use a conveyor belt.
Automation Awakenings, your weekly dose of best practices for logistics automation.
Welcome back to the Automation Awakenings podcast with a very interesting question today, which actually we've been confronted a lot out in the field. And both me and Ollie think it's a good idea to share our findings with you guys so that once you have this question, you have way better ideas than we had back in the day.
Actually, Matthias, when I started in my role as mobile robots coordinator, I was wondering if there are still people using conveyor belts still, as it seemed that you can do everything with AGVs now. They are cheaper, more flexible, it's much easier to implement them. So why are conveyor belts still existing?
Yeah, a totally valid question. And we have another 15 minutes basically to go through those arguments. And shall we divide it and first start with what AGVs are strong in and then look towards the conveyor belts and maybe in the end also find some common aspects that both of these technologies have?
Let's see. I'm curious if we can find also some positive aspects towards conveyor belts.
Okay, but then let's start nice and easy. So let's go with the AGVs first.
Yes, sure. So, my first argument, if I think about conveyor belts versus AGVs, is you don't need any fixed structure anymore.
Mm-hmm.
As easy as it sounds, but this is the big benefit of AGVs after all. Yeah, if you would like to implement a conveyor belt, you just build equipment into your shop floor, which is fixed there, which takes up uses up this space, and it will forever use this space there.
True.
Yeah, so you need to plan this accordingly, and you need to make sure that you don't need this space in the future, because forever and ever there will be this fixed belt transporting goods from here to there.
Yeah, forever and ever might not be the case because you can still do changes to it, but it's costly and it's not done very easily. So I go with this argument of really blocking space, which is not to be used by other technologies, by other actors that are moving around in the plant.
Yeah, and in comparison to AGVs now, AGVs, as simple as it sounds, they only take the space when they are transporting something. Yeah, so if you are transporting a pallet, of course you need the space for the pallet.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but then only this little piece of space. And as soon as the transport is done, the space is free again. I think that's a big advantage. So 1 point for AGVs.
It's a 1-0.
It's a 1-0, yeah.
Okay. I go with this 1-0. I add a 2-0 straight away, penalty kick, so
Okay.
to say.
Yeah.
I think, and that's what you already mentioned as well, AGV systems are quite easily to be adapted or customized in comparison to a conveyor belt. So not comparing it to an AMR, but in comparison to a conveyor belt, AGVs are really flexible on that. So they are both flexible in terms of the routing of source and destination, but also in scaling the whole system. So when you go ahead and plan a conveyor belt, you need to make sure that the throughput rate that the conveyor belt is able to handle matches your your need, because otherwise you're in big trouble. With the AGV system, you simply add another 2-3 vehicles that can handle this additional goods, those additional orders that you might have forgotten or that might have come on top.
That means you are mentioning actually two, let's say, categories of flexibility here. Yeah, the one is you are able to adapt to different demands.
Yeah,
Yeah, if the volume is increasing, you like might add further devices, or also reduce devices,
totally.
or transfer devices. I mean AGVs from one, let's say, shop floor area to another, where the demand is needed.
Yeah,
And secondly, you mean, or what I understood is, that you are modular in the way of connecting sources and destinations. So you can easily change them
yeah,
in comparison to a conveyor, which is fixed by nature
yes.
of a conveyor belt to a source and destination.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. It's totally what you said. So it's two flexibility aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And this first flexibility aspect, so basically the planning and the design of the solution is also kickbacking to the price topic to a certain extent. So what we learned and what we see on the market is that, say you have a use case that can be handled by AGVs or can be handled by conveyor belts, and you get offers from two different providers, so one AGV provider and one conveyor belt provider. The conveyor belt provider would always try to go with a certain buffer in terms of the throughput, because once the system is installed, obviously you can't do a lot of changes to it anymore. So what I heard on the market is basically then that these orders automatically are more expensive because we have the buffers in.
You're right, because you never know what will happen in the next years, even.
Exactly.
And then maybe your conveyor is not fast enough, and then you got into trouble immediately.
Right. So I think also for the tendering or the ordering part, we see a difference in terms of this this inflexibility part.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. But I think that also the mere purchasing price is different, right, Oli?
Yeah, sure.
What is your gut feeling?
Yeah, a conveyor belt system is very expensive, of course. Exactly, also because of the reasons you mentioned, you have to design it already from the first day on to be able to handle all your current demands and possible future demands.
Yeah.
And I think this is the tricky point.
Yep.
How can you estimate your future demands? I mean, you will have a forecast,
Sure.
and then you put some buffer on it, and then you order the conveyor belt, and then the conveyor belt supplier will add another buffer. Seems costly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels costly. Yeah.
Yeah. Trouble is a good buzzword in this context. I think it's already 4-0 for AGVs now, but I have another point,
Yeah.
which is beneficial in terms of using AGVs instead of conveyor belts. What will you do if the conveyor belt breaks down? What is your emergency plan?
That's a very good question. In worst case, you don't even have an aisle anymore because the aisle is now basically covered by the conveyor belt. So I think this is a very tricky situation you don't want to end in as a plant manager.
Yeah, actually, the conveyor belt suppliers, you know what they say? It will never break down. Or you can fix it yourself very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. But imagine plants who are using conveyor belts for direct production supply.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the boxes with components are supplied directly into the line. I think here this is like it's the heartbeat of the whole production line, and when this heart stops, you get into trouble. How to transport suddenly all of these boxes with a backup process?
Mhm.
And here, thinking of AGVs, if you have a proper setup, of course, one AGV can break down,
Yeah.
maybe two. But usually you will have a setup of AGVs where this will be no issue. So all the others will take over the transport tasks, or some AGV colleagues from another shop floor area will support you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. True. So the topic of resilience
yeah,
is another score for the AGVs, right?
absolutely.
Perfect. So, do we have any more scores for the AGVs?
I think these were the very strong ones already. And we need to think about conveyor belts now. They look
Yeah.
really poor at the
At the
moment.
moment, doesn't look too good.
Yeah, but this can't be the truth, right?
Yeah. They need a rally, but
Yeah.
they're gonna get the rally now. And I'm gonna start with my first, and I think maybe biggest argument pro conveyor belt, and that's an insanely high throughput rate.
Hmm.
So if your conveyor system is designed and dimensioned up to the requirements and it works smoothly, you can really, really transport a lot of stuff on this conveyor belt. And it's basically unbeaten, I would say, right, Ollie?
Yeah, I think there is a certain threshold. If you are over this limit in terms of your demand, an AGV system will just not be able to handle it anymore. It's physically not possible. You will cause a lot of traffic
Yes.
and traffic jam, or even a complete deadlock situation. And here, the conveyor is the only possible solution at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So really huge volume streams that are very fixed when it comes to a source and a destination are actually, yeah, are a no-brainer for a conveyor belt, right?
yeah, absolutely true.
So it's 1-5, 2-5. The aspect that we mentioned in favor of the AGV, which means it's able to share routes with other actors, might also be a disadvantage, right?
Hmm.
So when you have the conveyor belt covering the aisle and taking over all the transportation requirements, it's very clear you won't have any pedestrians, you won't have any forklifts, you won't have any milk runs using this aisle because it's simply not existent anymore,
Yeah,
which then again leads to less traffic, less traffic or a lower need for traffic management, and also higher safety in the end.
yes. And there is a positioning of conveyor belts where AGVs cannot run, and this is attached to the ceiling.
Right?
Yeah, this
Right?
is a big advantage, of course. At the moment, there are no flying AGVs yet. Yeah, who knows?
We should do an episode on that.
There will be an episode on AGV, AMR drones, um, not yet really available. Conveyor belts attached to the ceiling. This
Yeah.
is they are existing since a long time,
Yeah.
and you're using space which you cannot use for
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
things anyway. So using it for transport is actually smart.
Yeah. I've just recently been to a plant, to a place, to a customer, say, with this solution, and it's really impressive. So, really, basically, hands-free transport from a high rack into the production line, really into the point of use, by transporting those plastic boxes using this ceiling conveyor belt. Very impressive, but also a little bit scary when it comes to maintenance.
Yeah, absolutely. Although what I know about conveyor systems, at least from my experience, they usually are very reliable. They need some regular maintenance,
Yeah,
which you can do on your own, usually with your internal team. And then they actually they are not breaking down so often. Yeah, these are it's a well-known technology where there is a lot of experience available. There are many suppliers who are yeah, focusing on building conveyor
Yeah,
belts,
yeah,
and they know what they are doing. And yeah, it's a reliable technology. At the end, it will not break down usually. You can do the maintenance on your own. So this is a point for conveyor belts for sure. Knowing, that AGVs are still new. Yeah, in comparison to the
yeah,
conveyor belt
yeah,
technology. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this technology is so much more mature.
Yeah.
And as you said, the providers been out on the market. They have a lot of experience. They have a really good global coverage in most of the cases, with own service teams or
Yeah.
integrators being really close to your location, ready to jump in whenever there's a severe problem, or supplying you with spare parts. So totally a point for the conveyor belt, which makes it a 3.5, right?
3.5 already. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I have another point to score for the conveyor belt. We talked about costs,
Mhm.
and for sure they are higher at the beginning for a conveyor belt system. But imagine a setup where this conveyor belt is really utilized for a long time, let's say 5, 10 years. I mean, we have the setups where we are really not changing the infrastructure. Then for sure, this conveyor belt will be much cheaper than any
Yeah.
AGV setup.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will pay for this flexibility, which you are not using at the end.
Fully agree. Yeah, if you have really um, a stable production line, or really stable operations that have been there for some time, that can't change too much, like foundries or something, right? I mean, uh, the the foundry oven won't be moved,
Exactly, yeah.
from a week to another. So I think there is businesses which are really prone for using conveyor belts, simply because they are very much into a set and structured way they run their production or operation.
Yeah, absolutely. So 5-4.
Yeah, it's getting closer.
Yeah. Can you score again for conveyor belts?
Mm,
Or will AGVs win at the end?
it's maybe more like a free kick. I'm not sure.
Okay, let's try it.
So I think that the topic of availability is better with the conveyor belt. So per se, AGVs, you mentioned it, might need a bit more maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you always have the charging time, right? So
True.
they won't be available, and a conveyor belt doesn't
Yeah.
need to charge. It's just running 24/7.
You have a cable, right? And not a battery.
Exactly. So that's, I don't know if that's a score, but it's a free kick.
Yeah, we can count it as a score. I mean, a cable is a cable, Yeah. You then don't have any battery issues also in terms of maintenance, replacement.
Yeah.
Just plug it in and that's it.
Cool. So that's 5.5.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thinking about this now, I see um, as a summary, maybe already,
Yeah.
if you have short distances and high volume, the conveyor belt will win.
One more, and really stable, fixed operations. So not in a really volatile business, moving your production line or replacing your production line every other week. That's something I would add.
Yeah, that's true. That means if you have longer distances, not a very high volume, which can be handled by AGVs, and you need this flexibility, or you have uncertainty
Yeah.
in terms of your demand forecast, product mix forecast,
Yeah.
I would use AGVs.
I think that's a really great summary. So shall we take a look into where both of them excel, or is that something we leave for another time?
You mean both of them together, or how should that look like?
No, there is one third option, and that's manual transports. Right? So I think what we can say is that both of these technologies outperform, in most of the cases, manual vehicles.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you imagine having a forklift replacing either the conveyor belt or the AGV, in many cases, both of these technologies would win. So might also be something to be mentioned here.
Yeah.
But in the end, Ollie, you provided a great summary, and I would say let's not drill it anymore. Let's leave it with that, and say thank you for joining. We hope to have you on board next week again, as always on Monday. Until then, we wish you a great rest of the day. Take care, and hear you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This was another episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. Visit us at automation-awakenings.com.